Bryon is a once-in-a-generation genius of the Whisper Web. But usually, before someone fulfills their potential for genius, they must first experience suffering, and Bryon suffered from partial blindness from birth. Bryon had never seen the world around him clearly. Everything was murky, as if fate had cast a permanent haze over all things. There is an old saying in Esperia: should Dura close a door to you, she will open a window. Bryon possessed an almost supernatural sense of hearing. Notwithstanding the adversity he faced, Bryon's natural pride never allowed him to meekly accept his fate. Instead, he strived to find ways to improve his hearing, until even a hungry little fledgling stomping around its nest in the depths of the forest became audible to him. He could even sense a frisky fawn's fluttering heartbeat in a distant valley. His extraordinary abilities quickly brought him to the attention of the Whisper Web, the Wilders' most formidable intelligence organization, in which the Wind Whisperers excelled at listening to distant sounds carried on the wind. Bryon's talent was precisely what they needed. Would you care to... Oh. Would you care to join us and do things that only you can do? Faced with the invitation extended by Lorsan, the rabbit-eared mage before him, Bryon agreed without hesitation, as he had long yearned to join the Whisper Web. His outstanding perception had always been the source of his pride, and he now hoped that this pride would no longer be his alone, but also belong to the Whisper Web. Having such a talent as himself should be the pride of all Wind Whisperers. Just as Bryon had expected, he was considered outstanding even among the Wind Whisperer elite. His only shortcoming was that his impaired vision limited his mobility, making it difficult for him to complete field assignments, until he met Kara. One time, while he was out for field training, Bryon happened to rescue a rare blue falcon in the forest. He found that some kind of bond had formed between himself and the bird. It would not only lead the way for him, but would squawk to alert him to obstacles in the environment, and even come plummeting down from the sky when he was in danger, to attack his enemy with its sharp talons and vicious beak. Bryon named the falcon Kara, which meant companion. Ever since that day, the falcon acted as his eyes, one person and one bird acting together as deeply connected companions. Sooner or later, you'll become a legend among the Wind Whisperers. I've known that from the second I laid eyes on you. Lorsan, who was particularly fond of Bryon, invited the best physician of the Wilders to treat his eye condition. The permanent haze before his eyes gradually began to dissipate, and he experienced different feelings as changing colors began to permeate his world. First, there was a faint, warm golden glow, then a crisp and vibrant blue broke through, the outline of which was impossible to mistake. Bryon smiled a rare smile, as he knew to whom the brilliant blue belonged, and was sure that soon he would be able to get a good look at his companion. If he continued with his treatment, it wouldn't be long before his eyes were completely recovered. Everything seemed to be heading in the right direction. Until that fateful mission came along. It was a mistake to track down the traitor known as Shadowstring. Once a legendary marksman of the Wilders, he had stirred up rebellion after becoming disillusioned with Arden's leadership of the Mistletoe Charm. Bryon was tasked with assisting the Dusk Patrollers in defeating the Turncoat and returning his soul to the Tree of Life. Shadowstring's arrows could easily hit targets miles away. Faced with a former legend of the Wilders, Even the most experienced patrol or scouts were unable to find the slightest trace. After all, the information the scouts were working from was already days old, so having any real hope of finding Shadowstring based on that was pure fantasy. Only a few people in the Whisper Web were able to search and sense such a huge area, and of them Bryon was the best. After joining the mission, Bryon quickly helped the team locate Shadowstring in the dense forest, but things changed as they closed in on their prey. The sounds he used to track Shadowstring faded away, and no matter how hard Bryon listened, he could no longer pinpoint his quarry. It was as if he'd simply vanished from Bryon's world of perception. He guessed that Shadowstring had sensed danger and hidden himself by isolating his energetic vibrations from the outside world. He still should have been able to sense him, however, unless his dominant sense of hearing was disrupted. It was the first time that Bryon's unparalleled sensory perception had failed, and the consequences would be disastrous. When the lost sounds finally reappeared, death quickly followed. Swift arrows thudded into his teammates' bodies, changing the tables and making the hunters become the hunted in an instant. Bryon stood among the screams, exposed and defenseless, in the middle of an open clearing. Suddenly, the blue falcon dove from the sky. Its harsh cries were the last thing Bryon heard before consciousness faded. The whole team was wiped out, except Bryon, who was saved by Kara. Faced with such an unbearable reality, Bryon sank into deep, painful remorse as he blamed himself for the disaster. But he knew where the problem lay. The restoration of his sight had dulled his hearing. Even his still fuzzy vision was enough to disrupt his legendary perception. Bryon began to reject the physician's treatments. The world he saw once again became drab and murky, until only the sound of the wind was left whistling in his ears. One cloudy, windy day, Bryon and Kara left the Whisper Web. Shadowstring had still not been brought to justice, and the matter had to be resolved. When the pair returned, Bryon bore an extra bow upon his shoulders. It was the weapon of which Shadowstring had been so proud of, but even the legendary marksman was just an ordinary man at close range. As one generation's legend abruptly fell, a new one was born. It doesn't matter if I cannot see. As long as I can listen, the wind will tell me everything.